are talking Queen of Spades, Through the Looking Glass. This one is directed by Alexander Dorogov, and this is actually a sequel to the movie The Queen of Spades Dark Rite, a Russian movie, and is essentially a ghost story along the lines of kind of the Insidious franchise to a certain degree. So the kind of the premise of this one, or the franchise now in general, is there's a kind of urban legend where you say this kind of ritual in front of a mirror. You can say a wish, but then you'll be potentially killed by this seemingly malevolent spirit. So this movie focuses on this brother and sister, an older sister with a young brother. And at the beginning of the movie, they're sort of squabbling in the back of a car, and it's distracting the mother who's driving, and she gets killed in an accident because of that. Now, the two kids are sent to a sort of boarding school type thing, and the older sister blames the younger brother for the death of her mother, or their mother, and they are kind of a little estranged because of this. Now, we were introduced to a plethora of other characters within this kind of school, and they find this sort of secret room where this mirror is there, and this is apparently the kind of the origin, if you like, of the Queen of Spades. This is where she used to reside in life, and we see a little bit of a backstory. And of course, they decide to say the ritual, and of course summon the this evil spirit, which of course wants to take their souls. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So this is not really essentially a follow, and outside of it's the same antagonist, but it's all new protagonist characters. You don't really have to see the first one to watch this one. There's no real kind of follow through outside of it's the same antagonist, and they more or less kind of explain the rules all again anyway. So you can kind of watch this as a completely separate film. Here's the difference between the two films, I would say. This is a Russian movie, and in the first movie, you really got the sense it was set in Russia in regards to, you know, take the language out of it, but just in the kind of the setting, kind of the cinematography. There's kind of these cold kind of Eastern Bloc, kind of like high-rise buildings that they've got that all look kind of desolate. It's snowing outside. With this one, it all takes place in this kind of stately mansion, and outside obviously the fact that these are obviously Russian actors, the actual visuals could have taken place anywhere. Now, I personally feel it takes away from something from what I liked about the original movie, in the fact that the kind of this Russian setting, which seems foreign to me here in the UK, added this extra kind of element of this cold starkness that was apparent within the first movie to a far more familiar setting of a creepy old manor. Now, in itself, the manor is creepy. There are some kind of good location shooting and set design here, but to me it ends up looking more generic than anything. However, let's talk about what works, because I'm kind of getting sidetracked here. So what works, first of all? So the setting is good. Now, if you're watching it in a bubble, I can't fault the kind of the set design here, but I do think it's kind of, there are some kind of good set designs with props and this kind of like this ritual room which looks very kind of creepy, and the actual school that it's sort of set in, again, does look like a particularly kind of gothic style, creepy kind of boarding school that you can imagine from your nightmares. There are some very creepy scenes as well. This kind of woman in black, very kind of a scary image, and they do some quite nice, although obvious kind of things in regards to the, you know, you'll see her in the kind of the background and things like that, and then she'll jump out from time to time. It's nothing original, but it's done to a good standard. And I feel the production here, very much like the first one actually, is slickly produced, and it's it feels like a professional, you know, professionally made slick machine behind this. It's kind of it's to a well-made standard. But outside of the things I've already mentioned, there are a few things that, to be honest with you, that I felt were a disadvantage of this movie, very much like the first one. I don't think it's necessarily maybe it's like a cultural thing, but there's very little characterization, I felt, in this movie. Maybe a little bit more than the first one, which is one of my gripes in the first movie. But still, the characters here are so paper thin. We get to know these kind of friends, and they have one defining caricature, you know, character traits. We have a cocky bad guy, we have a slutty girl, we have a fat girl who can't stop eating, and things like this, and that is it. That's all you get. There's no other kind of characterization outside of this one defining trait. even our main protagonist, to be honest with you, is relatively kind of thinly sketched out. And this is a problem I had with the first movie. And as I've mentioned, it does lose something, I feel. It loses a little bit of individuality, having this kind of more generic kind of horror setting that kind of makes it look like a lot of other things. And I have to say, this movie is very influenced by other horror movies. I've mentioned in the Insidious franchise. I mean, this black sort of ghost, this female figure, this woman in black, looks very similar to the kind of like the imagery that you'll see in the Insidious movies, and you'll see this kind of like mirror world here, and again it looks very similar. Even certain plot points travelling across to the kind of the ghost dimension and things like this, again it's borrowed from other movies. And in fact, this movie is just chock full of cliches. Jump scares where you expect them. You know, you'll have a character on screen and there'll be like a void, you know, there, so you just know something's going to pop up in that void. Things like that, very obvious kind of filmmaking, done to a good standard, but nonetheless it's very obvious. And one thing I will have to point out is the first movie I actually watched with subtitles. This one I watched dubbed. The English dub is awful, so I recommend that you would watch the in subtitles, to be honest with you. I have seen reviews really slating the acting, but I thought you can't really do that on a dub, to be honest with you. It's not necessarily the actors emoting. It's just a poor dub. But yeah, the English dub isn't great. So I'd say recommend this in the subtitled rather than dubbed. But like I said, I feel the characters are quite shallow to begin with anyway. It's difficult. I mean, the acting seemed okay if you're looking at it from a physical side. The characters that are a little bit kind of like thinly sketched out, as I've mentioned, and there are a couple of maybe like little bits of overacting physically here and there. But it's difficult to really judge, you know, a foreign language film that is a dubbed version, but the voiceover, if you do watch the voiceover, is awful. So overall, I've got to say, it more or less shakes down to a relatively average kind of haunting movie. It is a well-made haunting film, and there are some scary sequences here, but it's nothing you really haven't seen before. And I do feel it kind of loses a little bit of the originality that was in the original, because it's just more of a familiar setting and kind of loses the uniqueness that this kind of cold, barren, sort of Soviet sort of feel that the kind of the first movie has, instead of more of a traditional Gothic manor type thing, which is fine, but it just, you've seen it all before. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.